All right, let's automate 100 YouTube shorts with AI. All right, let me give you a preview of the final product, and then we'll build it out step by step in Gumloop. So these are those talking head TikTok and YouTube short videos that you see. I'm using Greg Eisenberg as our guinea pig. He's one of my favorite follows on both X and YouTube. So this AI was created with this automation. So let me just play part of this video, and then we'll show you how to do this step by step.
Marketing will resemble high-frequency stock trading in the near future. Agents working 24/7 will monitor opportunities and create personalized micro interactions, making you like a portfolio manager adjusting risk based on real-time signals.
All right, so that is Greg's voice that we're cloning with ElevenLabs. This is obviously Greg from his YouTube channel, and then we're using JSON to video to kind of mix together the audio and the image or the video background there. And we're going to feed it scripts from Google Sheets into our automation so that we can create these talking head style YouTube short videos at scale. All right, let's take a look at the workflow inside of Gumloop. So we're starting with a Google Sheets trigger here. So we're going to keep our transcripts inside of Google Sheets, and I'll show you kind of where to get these quotes depending on what your use case is. But these are all quotes from Greg Eisenberg on one of his podcasts, okay? So this is where we're gonna store our scripts to kick off the automation. Then we're gonna feed that script into two different nodes here. So let's do the Ask AI node first. This is going to help us create an image based on the script. So YouTube Shorts does not have cover images, but TikTok does. So if you want to post these to TikTok, this will generate a cover image, an AI image for TikTok. We're using two nodes to do this. We have an Ask AI node to come up with a prompt based on the script. And then we're using the API from OpenAI to generate the image based on the prompt, which is based on the script. So that's kind of off here to the side, right? That's going to create the image. Then we're going to use ElevenLabs to create the audio file based on our script. So I'm using a custom node here. I'll talk about this a little bit later on, but ElevenLabs will create that audio file for us. Then we're going to store that audio file in Google Drive. We're going to do a little text manipulation, which I'll talk about, and then we're going to call the API for JSON to video. So this is generated with JSON to video based on the audio file that ElevenLabs generated, as well as the kind of talking head image with no sound that you can see with Greg in the background. And again, I'll show you how to do that. Then we're going to wait for 2 minutes to have the video finish. We're going to do a little JSON reading, and then we're going to call the API to get the finished URL, right? So this URL right here, once the video is complete, we want to fetch that URL. We're going to do a little more JSON reading, and then eventually we're going to store everything inside of Airtable. So we'll have the script, we'll have the file URL to the video itself, and then we'll have a URL to the image that was generated by OpenAI. So in terms of tech stack, I'm going to be using Gumloop. I'm going to be using ElevenLabs. And if you want to create a custom voice like we are in this, you do need a paid account. I think it's only like $5 a month or something ridiculously cheap. And then you need an API key from JSON to video, which is free so long as you're okay with having this watermark. All right, so let's build this out step by step. So inside of Gumloop, let's create a new flow here. And again, we're going to trigger this with our Google Sheet. So you'll want to create your own Google Sheet here that has just one column for script. So this is going to be text that ElevenLabs will be creating a voiceover from. So have a Google Sheet here. And by the way, if you want this template for free, be sure to join my free school community that's linked below this video. It will have the full Gumloop tutorial already pre-built out for you. Again, the link is below this video. So in Gumloop, let's just rename this. And again, we want to kick this off with a Google Sheets trigger. So let me add my first note here. Search for Sheets, and we want a Google Sheets reader. Okay, so we want to activate this as a flow trigger. So when we add a new script to the sheet, it's going to kick off our automation. So I'm going to click that button on up here. The trigger mode, we're going to keep at create row. And then you just need to link your Google Sheet file to Gumloop. You're going to want to hook up your Google account to Gumloop if you haven't done that. So let me pick my file. All right, so I've selected my file here, which you can see, and then all of the other options we can leave blank. And now we have our trigger. But let's talk about how to actually populate this spreadsheet, right? Again, this is going to depend on your use case. I'm just going to show you a demo of what we're doing in this video. So again, what we're doing is we're going to use Greg Eisenberg. Again, huge fan of Greg, his channel, and his X account. And we're going to create these talking head style videos for Greg using his voice, his cloned voice, his actual face, and then also his quotes, right? So what I did to populate, just a handful of these sound bites, let's call them, is I went to a recent YouTube video. All right, so this one is how to use AI agents to make money. And then I have an extension in here, which is ChatGPT for YouTube. It's a Chrome extension. And what this allows you to do is get the transcript directly inside of YouTube, right? So if I hit this button, it's going to show me the whole transcript. Now, what I did after that was I just copied the transcript, and then I went into Gemini, and I was using 2.5 here. All I prompted it with was this. I said, I need you to take this transcript and generate 2 to 3 sentence sound bites that I will use for YouTube Shorts. Give me 5 sound bites from Greg. So you can pull out as many as you want, and you can obviously use as many YouTube videos as you want in order to get your scripts or your sound bites. But that was the entire prompt. And then all I did was paste in the transcript that I grabbed here from the Chrome extension. And then after a few seconds, here you can see Gemini is giving me the 5 sound bites that I'm going to use in my spreadsheet, right? So we can see the 5 sound bites over here, and all I simply did was copy and pasted at least the first 3 over here. So that's how I'm generating the script ideas or the soundbite ideas. Next, let's talk about creating the images to go along with these videos. So again, Shorts does not have cover images, but TikTok does. So we're going to build out kind of a separate flow on the side to use the OpenAI image model to create these kind of TikTok covers based on the script, okay? So this is kind of a cheesy example here from one of the last runs I was testing. But again, the idea is we're going to build these covers out for TikTok, and we'll use the native integration that Gumloop has with the OpenAI image model, which makes this really easy. All right, the first thing we want to do is create the prompt, or have AI create the prompt. We don't want to be manually prompting the image model here. We want AI to do it for us, and importantly, we want it to do it based on the context of whatever script we're using. All right, so to do that, we're going to use an Ask AI node. So let's come into over here, and then I'm going to search for Ask AI. Now let's drag this onto the canvas, and let's actually put it to the side a little bit over here. All right, so let me select the Ask AI node, and the first thing that I want to do is I want to connect the output from my script sheet into the input here, because we're going to want to use that as a variable. Now again, this is kind of our prompt generator. So let's rename this. And I have a prompt on my clipboard here that's going to say, and again, I'm not going to read this whole thing, but the template is available for free in the link below. I'm saying you are a world-class prompt engineer. Your task is to take a YouTube Shorts script and produce an image generation prompt. All right. So we're asking AI to create the prompt for the next step. And then what we need to do is take the input here from the script and drag it over here. So I'm going to say, here is the script. I forgot that part of the prompt. Okay, so we're providing the context for the AI node. So now it has whatever script is pulling in during that run, it has that as the context to create its prompt. All right, next, let's actually create the image itself. And what's really nice about Gumloop is they have the integration with the new OpenAI model, the image model, natively. So there's no hacking anything here. We can just drag it from the node. So again, this is the generate image node. So I want to drag the output from the prompt generator to the input here, because that's going to be our prompt. AI will create the prompt for us. So let me drag the response from the previous step as my prompt. And then the number of images, I'm going to keep this as 1. You can kind of make as many images as you want. And then the quality, I'm going to turn this on to high. And then let's just save this. All right, we've got it saved, and let's actually just test this flow to make sure it's working. So I can test this manually just by hitting run, and we'll see in the right sidebar here that it's going to read either the first or the last row in Google Sheets. And you can see now it's running through the prompt generator, and now it's going to generate the image for us. And inside of Gumloop, you can see the runs at any time in your sidebar. And you can also click in here. So here is the script that it grabbed, which is this marketing will resemble. So it's grabbing the first one in our list. Okay, so this is the input. And now here is the output, right? So this is the prompt that AI came up with for the image model, all right? And it's doing it based on the script, right? It's using this as the context. Now let's see if the image is created. It's still generating the image. Let's give it another second. All right, so you can see it finished the image here. Marketing as high frequency trading. So you can see it's contextually accurate. Marketing will resemble high frequency stock trading in the near future. So it's getting that correct. We've got personalized marketing, and we've got this kind of futuristic image. So the image model is working. The prompt generator is working as well. All right, so we have the image node working, which is great. Now, eventually, we're going to store that in Airtable in this column over here. We're not quite at that step, so I'm going to kind of just leave this hanging out over here. Now, we may need to add one more step after this, depending on how Gumloop is kind of behaving. We'll get to that later. Now we have the prompt generator working. We have the generate image working. And now I want to talk about ElevenLabs, okay? So we're going to want to create a voice in ElevenLabs. So let me show you how to do that. So ElevenLabs has a bunch of kind of default voices, but if you're trying to either do this for your own videos or a client or whoever, you want to use kind of a custom voice. So in ElevenLabs, you want to go into voices, and then you want to click add a new voice. And what you want to choose here is instant voice clone. Now there's two options here. You only need 10 seconds of audio. If you're doing this for yourself, all you do is click on record audio, read a script, and then your voice will be cloned. If you're doing this kind of as a creative project or as a client, so for example, the way that I did this for Greg, and just a heads up, this is just for demonstration. Obviously, I would never use Greg's voice in any videos. This is just a demo, so use this responsibly. But in order to get Greg's voice, the only thing I did is I used a screenshot tool. I used CleanShot to just do a recording of my screen. So I hit record, and then I hit play. So Greg's voice is playing for 10 seconds or 20 seconds or however long it was. And then I stopped the recording, and then I downloaded the file, right? So now I have a screen recording of Greg's voice from YouTube, and then I went into ElevenLabs, and then I uploaded that file, all right? So that's how I created kind of the file for Greg. Again, if you're doing it for yourself, you can just record the audio. And once you've created your voice, you'll see it in your voices list over here. So here you can see my Greg voice.
Kindness spreads like sunshine, brightening even the cloudiest day.
So you can test it out and hear what it sounds like. And importantly, when we go to the next step, we'll now be able to use this in the JSON to video. Okay, now let's talk about the Gumloop part of ElevenLabs. There's a couple of different things going on here with Gumloop and ElevenLabs. So they do, which I did not know when I was building this out, they actually do have a native integration with ElevenLabs, but it's not called ElevenLabs, which is what I did not know. It's called audio processing. Now, there's a catch with this that I'll talk about in a second. But if you don't want to deal with hacking code together and you just want to use a generic ElevenLabs voice, so this will not work with the custom voice. I'll get to that in a minute. But if you want to use one of these just basic or standard ElevenLabs voices, you can use the audio processing node, okay? So actually it's called text-to-speech. So let me click into text-to-speech, and you'll see when I click down on model, there's ElevenLabs, and here is where you can choose the standard ElevenLabs voices, right? So you'll see the drop down, but there's no custom voices, at least that I could figure out, right? So the Greg voice in my account is hooked up. I do not have the Greg voice here. So if you want to use the standard voice, you can do that. And what you would do is you would select the script and you would go here. So that would be the text, right? So the script would be the text. You can give it a file name and you can choose your voice, and then you would just follow the rest of my video step by step. But I'm not going to use the text-to-speech node because, again, I want to use this custom voice that we just created. Now, in order to do that, it's going to involve a little bit of code. So let me just delete this node because I'm not going to use it. Now, inside of Gumloop, you can create your own node, right? They call them custom nodes. So if Gumloop does not have an integration that you want, you can create it yourself. Now, this is not going to be a deep dive into custom nodes, but let me just show you what I'm talking about. So I'm going to come back into my node library. Now you can see custom nodes, and these are all ones that I've built here. So let me just click into my custom nodes, and this one is called version 2 ElevenLabs, right? So this is basically the equivalent of the native ElevenLabs builder. The main difference is that I'm able to code in the voice that I want. So let me just show you what a custom node looks like. So here's the custom node builder inside of Gumloop. Again, this is not going to be a step-by-step tutorial on how to use this, but I will share the code minus my API keys in my school community if you want to recreate this custom node. But just a quick overview here. So again, this is if you want to build an integration that Gumloop does not have natively. Okay, so it's called the custom node builder. So you just give it a name. So mine is version 2 ElevenLabs. You decide on your inputs and your outputs. So for this, I have a single input, which is the script, and then I have a single output, which is going to be the file, right? So the file from ElevenLabs. And then in terms of your code, I'm not going to click into it because it's going to show several of my API keys. When you go into Logic, you can prompt the custom node builder to help you code the node in Python, or I'm going to share the Python code so you can just copy and paste it directly. And actually, let me just pull up a blank custom node that has nothing in it so I can show you the back end, right? So this is the same as I was showing you before, right? You've got the title, you've got an input and an output, right? And you would have to select these over here. Now, on the back end is the code itself. So if you want to use the code that I'm going to provide over in school, you would paste it in where this green line says your code here, because the first line and the last line are hard-coded in. You can't delete those. So you're just going to paste it in here, and you're going to save your node after you name it. Obviously, this is just untitled. So once you save your node, it will be available for you to use in your Gumloop account. So let me just go back over here. So you can see I'm in my node library, and then you can see under custom nodes, you'll have it available to drag onto your workflow. If you want a full demo on Gumloop custom nodes, let me know in the comments and I'll try to do a video on that, but I don't want to spend any more time on doing custom nodes. So I have my ElevenLabs custom node on my canvas. And again, the only thing that I need to provide my node here is the script. So let me connect my Google Sheet, and I'm going to drag the script input into my script node here. And now, again, what this is basically doing is it's feeding the script directly into ElevenLabs, and I have coded in the voice that I want. Again, it'll be in the code that I provide, and I'll have directions on where to do that. But each voice has its own kind of unique ID. So this is using the Greg Eisenberg voice that I created earlier inside this custom node here. Okay, so let's keep going. So now that we're going to have our ElevenLabs audio file, what we need to do next is store that file in Google Drive, because we're going to need a URL to the specific file later on with our JSON to video step. So we want to just upload this audio file to Google Drive. So to do that, I'm going to search for Google Drive. I want a file writer. So let me drag this node onto my canvas. So with your Google account connected, you want to pick the folder. So I'm going to be putting all of my files in this YouTube Shorts demo folder. All right, so I've selected my YouTube Shorts demo folder, and now I'm going to connect that file directly to Google Drive. And so what I need to do here is for this file to write input, right? What's the file that we need to put into Google Drive? It's going to be the output from ElevenLabs. So let me drag that over here. Now, in terms of the file name, You could get a separate AI node to write a file name based on the script if you want to. For this demo, I'm just going to call this test. We do not want to use a link. And now our Google Drive file writer is ready to go. And again, you can test these flows at any point. I'm not going to test every single step, but I think it's smart to maybe test that ElevenLabs step before we go any further. So let me just run this from scratch. This is going to take a minute because it's going to hit the ElevenLabs API to create that voice file. But let's see what happens. So it's calling our Google Sheets reader. Now it's sending that script, probably the first script again. Oh, the ElevenLabs step was very fast. So it says that it's created that file. I'm a little skeptical because of how fast it happened. It wrote the file, it said, to Google Drive. So while the image is being created, let's see if that actually happened. And there is a file size here. So this should be the audio file. Let me open and play.
Agents working 24/7 will monitor opportunities and create personalized micro interactions.
All right, so that step is working. I am impressed how fast that ElevenLabs API generated that. So there's the audio file. Again, it's grabbing this script, sending it to ElevenLabs. We're using our custom voice here. So that step worked flawlessly. The image is still taking a little while to generate, even though we've already shown that that step works. And the file is now inside of Google Drive. So our steps are working. Let's just keep building. And by the way, here's another image which looks very similar to the last one, but the flow is working, so let's keep going. All right, now let's talk about JSON to video. So this is gonna actually create the video file. This is somewhat of an involved step. It's not hard, it's just a little bit involved. So what we need to do, and again, this is free, so long as you don't mind the watermark. If you don't want the watermark, then you should do a paid account. But what I'm doing is a paid account. Sign up for JSON to video. And what you want to do is go into movie templates. All right, so we're going to create a new template and click on that button. And what I'm going to do is show you the one that I already have. Actually, let me just come into here. So here's the new template. And you can see we have to build out the scenes here. And I'm going to go to my finished scene so we can see what it looks like at the end. So the first thing that you want to do is select a video scene. So add new element and then click on video, click on add. And this is where you need to get a soundless video or a video with no sound to upload. So I'll show you what I mean, and then I'll tell you how I did this. So if I rewind here again, so this is my video in the scene here. Now watch when I hit play. Forget about the caption for now. I'm talking about just the video that has no sound. So you want to upload a video, like a talking head video like this, with no sound. So that's very important. So you can, again, if this is yourself, it's as simple as taking your iPhone, talking into the camera, removing the sound, or not talking at all, just mouthing into your iPhone so it looks like that. And then you can upload it in the next step, which I'll show you. Now, in order to get this for Greg, what I did is, again, I used CleanShot. So in CleanShot, you can drag across the video like this, right, to record the screen. So I hit record video, and I found a moment in the video where Greg was talking directly to the camera without nothing else on the screen, so no captions or text on the screen. No one else was on the video. It was just Greg talking directly to the video for about 30 seconds. So I hit record video. I played the video on mute, and then I stopped recording the video. So what my final file looked like was Greg talking into the camera with no sound for about 30 seconds. All right, now that you have that file, again, if it's yourself, it's as simple as doing a selfie video. If it's a client, you're gonna need to find them talking into the camera for, I would say, 30 seconds, depending on how long your sound bites are. But now that you have your file, coming back to JSON to video, again, we're in the video scene here. What you want to do is this asset for the source URL, click on the edit button, and then go to uploads. So you can see my Greg videos here, but you want to upload your file and then select whichever one you're using And once you hit save, you want to scale to cover. So one thing that I should have mentioned earlier is that obviously when you're doing the iPhone video, you're already going to have a vertical video. This should be obvious. But if you're doing the screen recording thing that I showed you earlier, when you're doing kind of the screen grab to grab the video, you want a vertical video, right? These are obviously vertical videos. So that's important as well for your file. And then once you have your video, what you want to do is you want to come, so this was in the video tab here, you want to come into movie template and you want to change the resolution here to custom to do a vertical style. So go to custom, and then for width, we'll do 1080, and then for height, we'll do 1920, and now you've got your vertical video. So if we play this, so here's the video of Greg, he's talking, but there's no sound, and it's vertical style. All right, now that you have your video, the next thing that we want to do, if you want, is add subtitles, right? So under video, let's click add new element, and then click on subtitles, and then just click add. And over in my finished video, you can see the style. I have classic. The font family, you can choose whatever font you want. I have Roboto. And then for the font size, I have it as 90. So you can see when I play this, right? So we've got Greg talking with no sound, and now we've got the subtitles, right? So you can preview the subtitles. And so the next thing that we're gonna need, obviously, is the audio. So let me go back into the new project here. So under subtitles, what you wanna do is click add new element, and then you want to add audio. Now, importantly for audio, we're gonna leave this blank because remember, we're gonna pull in the audio file from the previous step from ElevenLabs. So once you finish those steps, you can come back and just use this back arrow. And what you wanna do is go into your movie templates, and you see this I button, you wanna open that up. So this is the code that we're gonna use in the next step inside of Gumloop. So make sure to open this up and then copy this to your clipboard. All right, so again, we're gonna take this code and we're gonna copy it to our clipboard and go into Gumloop. We're gonna paste it into Gumloop and add one extra line, which I'll show you. So let me come back into Gumloop. And now under your Google Drive writer node, we wanna do a combine text node, and I'll explain this in a second, but search for combine text, drag that onto your canvas, connect your Google Drive output to the combine text node, and then where it says format, this is where you wanna paste in the code from JSON to video. So I'm gonna paste this in here, and what we're gonna do is add an extra step here, not an extra step. We're gonna add one more line here. All right, so I want you to go down to your code, and this is, for me anyway, towards the bottom. So it's gonna be under your ID, and it's gonna be under your type. And what I added here was this. So in yours, it's going to be blank, or it's not going to be there at all. So what yours is going to look like is this. You need to add a comma, and then I'm going to hit return, and then I'm going to paste this. So it's quotes, SRC, quotes again and again. This is going to be in my school community, colon, and then two quotes with right now nothing in between it, right? So this is going to say, what is the source of the audio? And our audio source, of course, is going to come from ElevenLabs, that file, right, which is inside of Google Drive. That's why we connected the Google Drive URL to this node here. And so what I want to do inside these two quotes, and I have an extra quote here, by the way. So it should be one quote, SRC, colon, double quotes, but in between. So I want you to click in between those double quotes, and we're going to drag in the Google Drive URL. So it goes right between those two quotes like this. Okay. So now in our code, we're using that ElevenLabs file URL. All right, now we're gonna use this code to pass through the JSON to video API. And to do that, I'm gonna search for inside of Gumloop, call API, this node here, right? So I'm gonna drag this onto my canvas. I'm gonna connect this code to the call API node, right? And so we're gonna call the API for JSON to video to create the video. So for the body, I'm gonna use the combined text, which is this code right here. So I'm gonna drag that combined text into the body. For the URL, what you wanna use is this URL right here. So it's the API JSON to video movies. For method, we want to use post, right? Because we're creating on the JSON to video API. And then we just need to add a couple of headers here. So let me click add headers. So for the first one, the key, I want to do content type. The value is going to be application JSON. And then I need to add our API as the second header. So the key is going to be X API key. And then the value is going to be your API key. So inside of JSON to video, if you just come back here, you can just go into your API keys. You're going to find or have to generate your API key, and you want to paste it inside of this value field here. All right, so I pasted mine in and I closed the node so I wasn't exposing my key. But now if I just zoom out a little bit, I can see we're going Google Drive writer to the combined text, which is all of the code that we're passing here, to the API. So this is probably a good point to test this out to see if it's working. So let me save. And what I'm going to do is resume instead of starting this flow from scratch. Let me resume. Let's see if this works. I'm going to try to resume from the Google Drive step since we already have our file in here. I don't need to create it from scratch. Let me see if this works. I'm going to resume from here and see if this passes file URL to our API. So we have an error here. Let me see. All right. So if you code, you probably knew my error before I caught it here, which is in the combined text. Remember when I removed that second quote by SRC? It should have been on the end. So I believe this will be the error here. So I'm going to add that back in. So it should be quote, SRC, quote, then colon. So let me save that. And I'm assuming that's what the error was. But let's go back. Let me hit resume. I'm going to resume again from the Google Drive step. All right. So it said it called the API. We had a 200 response code. So it looks like the file worked, that API call worked. And the way that you can check that is inside JSON to video. You'll see there's the render logs tab over here in the sidebar. And you can see right now it's 5:16. And so this is running. So the response went through. Let me see if I can refresh, and it is done. And you can come in here, I believe, and click play. And there's the video that we just created. And so we tested that step and now we know it's working. All right. So the next thing that we need to do is we need to wait, right? Because it's going to take JSON to video, probably less than a minute, but 1 to 2 minutes maybe to create that video. And so while that's happening in the background, we don't want our Gumloop flow to continue because it's going to fail because the video hasn't been created yet. Now, unfortunately, Gumloop does not have a native wait function like make.com does. The good news is that I was able to create one as a custom node very easily and very quickly. I'm not going to walk through that, but again, I will share this inside of my free school community. So I created a custom node that's called a wait node, and this is hard coded in here to wait for 2 minutes. Okay, so let me just drag the output here to the input. I'm going to drag the API response as the input. And now our automation is going to wait at this step for 2 minutes before it goes further. All right. After the file is created in JSON to video, we need to get it back to our workflow to eventually store it in Airtable. In order to do that, we have to do a couple of steps. And you can see JSON to video refers to these as projects. So what we're going to need to do is come up with a way to extract the project ID out of the API call. So let me go back into the flow here in Gumloop, right? So after our wait node, we're going to want to add a JSON reader node here. So let me search for JSON, and here's the reader node. And what we want to get out of this is the project ID, okay? So let me drag the output, which is the API response when we're calling the API. So I'm going to drag that output, which is from the wait step here. And the key, right? The key that I want to add, that I want to read is just called project. All right. So let me save this. And you can see what I'm talking about in the flow that we ran before, right? So this is the call API step, right? So this is what it's outputting here. Okay. You can click into Gumloop here. Here's the API response. What we want to get is this. So that's why we're using the JSON reader, because we're going to take all of this text and just extract this project ID. Now, before we send another API call to JSON to video to get the finished video, we need another intermediate step, which I'll explain why, or you'll see why in a second, which is this combined text node. So let me drag that on. Now I'm going to connect the output from the JSON reader to this combined text node. Okay. And again, that's going to have the project ID. And then for format, what I'm going to paste is this API call URL, right? Which is this API JSON to video movies. And here is where I want to get the project ID number. So you can see I have project ID equals, and we want to pull that number from the previous step, which is the JSON reader, right? Which is extracting the project ID number. So this step is going to look like this, and then we're going to pass this API call into the next step. All right, let's do another call API node, drag that onto my canvas here, and then we'll connect these two nodes. Now, we don't need anything for the body here, but for the URL, we need that from the previous step, right? So this is the URL, this output here, which is going to have our project ID. So this is the combined text output. So I'm going to drag that into the URL field over here. The method is get, and then again, we're going to need two headers here. So the first one will be content type. The value is application JSON. And then the second header, again, you're going to need to put your API key in. So the key will be X API key, and then you're going to need to fill in the value here with the JSON API key. All right, so why don't we test this to see if it's working? And then I'm going to resume from the previous step up here, which is when we're initially calling the API to create the video. So it's calling the API. You can see that's done. Now it's going to wait, right? So this, again, this wait node, which I created, is a hard wait for 2 minutes. So let me pause the video while we wait. All right, so you can see it waited up here for 120 seconds. Then it went to the JSON reader node. Okay, so it passed through this code here. And remember, our JSON reader is trying to extract the project ID, which it did successfully. You can see here's the project ID that it took out. Then we're combining the text. So we're taking that project, and here is the API call we're making with the project ID appended at the end. And here's the get API call. All right, so that was a success as well. Now we have this video file.
Marketing will resemble high-frequency stock trading.
All right, so now what we need to do is pass this file into Airtable. All right, so in order to do that, we need one more JSON reader, right? Because we can't pass this entire thing into Airtable. That's not going to work. So let me come back into my node library. One more JSON reader node. Let's drag that onto the canvas here. We'll connect these two. So for the JSON string, obviously, we'll use that API response. And then for the key, what I want is the movie.url. All right, now we can use our Airtable node to put the movie URL or the video URL into Airtable. So let me search in my library here for Airtable. We want an Airtable writer. Let's drag that on. You'll need to connect your Airtable account, of course. And then what you want to do is choose your base and your table and your columns. So you can see I've got this Airtable base here, which has the script, the file URL, and the image. And I've chosen that here inside of Gumloop. Importantly, for the writer mode, you want to switch this to add a single row. Now we're going to connect these two nodes together. And then for the file URL, okay, we're going to use this JSON output. And now remember, from earlier on, we generated the image, so we need to connect that, and we also need to connect our script from the very first Google Sheets node. So let me zoom out and just connect those nodes together, right? So here's the generate image node. So I want to drag the output, which is the image itself, into Airtable. Now remember, I said I may need another node. I'm just not entirely sure. But let me grab, because this is going to come as a list. So if I try to drag this in, I don't know why, because it's a single image. If I try to drag that in, I'm going to get an error. So let me X that out, and I'll show you how to fix that error. Again, I don't know why Gumloop is outputting that as a list when it's really just a single image. So let me remove this connection, and I'll show you how to fix that. We just need another node after generate image. And that node is get list item. So I'll search for that in the node library. And what this is going to do is just give me a single URL instead of a list of URLs. Again, I'm not sure why that's happening, to be honest. So let me connect these two. And all you need to do is take the output from the image node and drag it into the list. And then for the index, we're going to set this at 0. Let's just save it. And now we'll drag this output to Airtable. Let me drag this. So this is going to be the image. Drag that into Airtable. So for our image field here, I'm going to drag that item from the guest list item. Now that should work. All right, so we have that. And now the last thing that I want to store here is the original script from Google Sheets. So let me just come back to the top here, and I'm going to drag this into Airtable. And truthfully, you could build this entire flow with Airtable. I'm just showing you different nodes and different way to connect things. That's why I have Google Sheets here. So for the script, let's drag the script output from the Google Sheets reader. All right, so now we have the Airtable set up. We've got our script. We've got the movie URL, which is the final video that we can upload to YouTube Shorts or TikTok. And then we've got the image. All right, so I'm going to go into Gemini, and I'm just going to pick a new quote here from Greg. So let me copy this, and I'm going to go into my spreadsheet, and let me paste in a new row. So again, this is triggering on a new row added to Google Sheets. So let's paste that in here, and then I'll go into my Gumloop history and refresh, and I can see that it kicked off here. You can see it was triggered by the Google Sheet row. So let me open this up and go to view, and we can see it running over here. So you can see it's taking the Google Sheet input. So what makes a good vibe marketer? All right, now it's running through all of the steps, right? So it created the voice file in ElevenLabs. It wrote it to Google Drive. We're calling the API for JSON to video to create the video. Now it's waiting the 2 minutes that we asked it to do. So let me just pause. All right, so it waited the 2 minutes. It did another API call back to JSON to video to get the finished video file URL. Now it's doing the AI steps last, the generate the image step last, and then eventually it should write it to Airtable. So Airtable right now is blank. So right now it's doing the last step, which is to generate the image. And hopefully we end up with an Airtable with our script, the image, and then most importantly, the finished YouTube short or TikTok video. So the image generation takes the longest. Let's just let this finish up. All right, so we can see it created the image, which if we want to, we can just preview right here, right? So what makes a good vibe marketer, which again, this is the script that we're using. So we've got the image here, kind of cool. Now let's go into Airtable importantly, and then as it refreshes, we can see we've got our script, what makes a good vibe marketer. Let's just make sure this link works for the image. So there's our image if we're putting these on TikTok. And now for the moment of truth, let's open up this video.
What makes a good vibe marketer? You need to think in systems, not just campaigns. Creating automated flowchart-like systems will help you outperform.
All right, so the video worked. We have our script. We've got our image. Everything worked perfectly. All right, so that's how you can automate YouTube Shorts and TikTok videos with AI, with Gumloop. If you enjoyed this content, do me a favor, like the video, subscribe to the channel. It really helps me out. And let me know in the comments below what type of workflow you want to see next.